Do you remember Judy Blume? Do you remember Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. If you're of my age or a certain age, that book will have resonated with you. And if you're not aware of it, that's okay. This podcast, welcome, episode 6 of Spiritual 411. I am so glad you're here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome, and all of the podcast platforms, thank you so much. This has been truly a gifted experience. And when you're in the flow state with spirit and you know you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing, it all just kind of falls into line. And I really feel like as much as I railed against not doing a podcast, and I don't know why, I just did. And, when I was brought to do it, it just happened. It just all fell into place. I found the right place. I found the right platform. I found the right community. So here we are, Spiritual 411, where hopefully Spirit is bringing you through what it is you need. And I actually wasn't, this really wasn't on my radar until about a week ago that I needed to do kind of an introduction. Who am I? Who is Melissa? What does it mean to be an evidential medium, spiritual life coach, master instructor with integrated energy therapy, energy healer? Like, how did you get here? Because it wasn't straightforward. And it really was that question. Are you there, God? Because for me, growing up, it was a very, very lonely experience. I grew up in a large family. It was a his, hers, and ours. But my mother was emotionally unavailable. My biological father was also very emotionally unavailable and physically unavailable. It was my stepfather who was the saving grace in my life, who kind of showed me love and compassion. But there was always a barrier between the two of us because I was different. He didn't really know how to connect with me. And now I know why. As an older version of myself, a wiser, hopefully, version of myself, I now know that, I had a wall up. I had a wall up. And so we're going to get into it in this podcast. We're going to get into, how your traumas and dramas really kind of impact your early life and the relationships around you that you carry into the rest of your life. And so, yes, it's going to be an introduction, but I also feel like it's also going to hopefully give you some spiritual nourishment for your own experience. If you're being brought to this podcast, the intention I always set is who needs me finds me. And so there's going to be something here a nugget that you should be able to take with you. So thank you for being here. And we're going to get into this. Are you there, God? It's me, Melissa. So if you're new here, I'm going to give you some backstory. If you're not new here, I hope you will take something out of this, especially if you've heard this story more than once. But I am going to try to inject a higher perspective with this, because I think that's what's important here, that this podcast and these episodes are all about helping you through what Spirit is bringing through me. And so when they asked me to kind of sit down and do an introduction of who I am, what my credentials are, why you should be following me, who is this person, why is it important that we listen to what she has to say, you're right. I'm really nobody at the end of the day, but I have become this vehicle for the angels, the archangels, the ascended masters, and your crossed over loved ones to bring you through the messages that you need. And so if you've not hit the like, the share, the subscribe on any of the platforms, please do. And I would love your comments. How is this impacting you? Is this helping you? And what would you like to hear about? What would you like Spirit to bring you about? Because what I always say is when you interact with all the buttons on all the platforms, you're adding your energy to the collective of this community, my community, whether it's just my community, all the communities come together, right? I am one person. So when you're interacting with my energy field, whether it's a podcast platform, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You're in my energy field, and then Spirit is able to inform the messages that come through, what is needed, right? Because that's really what we're here doing. We're raising our vibrational frequencies. We're growing and evolving into the multidimensional being that we are. We came here with a purpose, we came here with a mission. And what I'm figuring out is that my mission is to help those around me who are spiritually coming online. You're stepping into your intuition, you're stepping into your psychic ability, you're stepping into connection with your higher self, whatever that looks like. And you have questions. Can I trust and act on what I'm receiving? Is this happening? What is happening? Who am I getting into the connection with? How does this work? When I stepped into this just about a decade ago, it was about 2015 that I really started leaning into, okay, I am psychic, right? And I really had a hard time with that label because of all the old stereotypes out there, all the bad connotations with witches and evilness and in cults and rituals and just all of that old and being a charlatan, right? Being a deceiver. And so for me, it really was diving into the science. It really was diving into how does this work? I've always been someone who's wanted to unpack and figure out how things work. And it was really, so it doesn't surprise me that the stepfather that I was brought into my life was someone who he was also very much a fixer. And I mean, you know, um, electrician, plumber, mechanic, just really good with his hands, a welder, really good with figuring out how to put things together and fix things and make things. And I do that for the spiritual community. And so for many years, I actually taught, I was an English teacher in school, in the school systems in New York State. And that's what I would do is I would break down concepts and themes and ideas and helping students how to learn how to critically think and ask questions. And that's what we do here. That's what we do here. I've brought these skills and I learned at my father's hand to be with him when he was home was to be his right hand, to be what I term his oldest son. My brothers are much younger than I am. So when he married my mother, I was 5 years old. So by the time he was working out of town every week, he'd be home on the weekends, and to spend time with him was either I had to be helping him with a project in the house because he was totally remodeling our house from basement to roof, or I had to be out in the garage handing him tools. And so I've joked for years that I was his oldest son until his children, his two boys, got old enough to hang out with him and learn from him. And the other thing that was great about my stepfather was, and I call him my stepfather for just to help you understand who exactly I'm talking about, but he's my dad. My biological father that's it. He's just my biological father. But my dad is my stepfather. And one of the beautiful things is when me and my sister, who was 6 weeks old at the time, came into his awareness, created the family with him. He became our dad, and there was no stepchild, stepdaughter labels. It was my kids. And so he was our dad. And so to be in his presence was to be learning, and he never differentiated boys and girls. If you were there to learn, he was there to teach, and he was a very good teacher. He was very good at breaking things down and explaining things to us, especially about our cars, because first and foremost, he was a mechanic, and he loved cars. He loved restoring cars. He loved building cars. He loved fixing cars. It was his passion. And so once we started driving and getting our own cars, and we all had the proverbial first car of, just being older and needing a few things. So he took care of us. He took care of all of us and with our car needs, but he taught us. He taught us. It wasn't just I'll fix it and give it back to you. It was come over here, look at this, see what I'm doing, see why this. And really it was to help us to understand why we had to take care of our cars, why we had to be aware of, sounds they would make, ways they would feel when driving, and that sort of thing. So, and I've translated that into what I do, what I did when I was teaching English, and now what I'm doing in the spiritual community. I'm hopefully breaking down these concepts for you so that you can understand them in a way that you can then take them and use them. You can embrace them. It's all about learning. It's all about growing. It's all about evolving. And so why we had a barrier between us, why he really never knew how to connect with me was because I kept the wall up, right? I didn't know how to be emotionally connected because I had shut down that ability to be emotionally connected because of the two emotionally disconnected parents I had been taught by, really, that my emotions were not going to be addressed. And my biological father has crossed over. And to be honest with you, we have an amazing relationship now that he's on the other side. And my mother and I have done a lot of healing. We have done a lot of work. And so you can overcome your childhood and you can overcome the traumas and dramas that are created, but it takes work. And so that's what happened is I had to then start doing the work. And it was in my 20s after moving out. And, I really didn't get a childhood again to take care of all of us because there ended up being 6 of us. And my father, for many years, worked out of town Monday through Friday and would be home on the weekends. And so I was the oldest in the household, and I would be my mother's right hand. And she, in her coping with him being gone, would also find things to distract herself. And so I became the primary caregiver a lot of the time for my younger brothers and sisters. And so by the time I was 20, I felt like I'd already raised a family of children, which I had. And so for me, the priority was not to go out and have children or to find a partner. It was to have some fun. And I did. I had some fun in my 20s. Made some mistakes, as we all do in our 20s. Nothing monumental. But I had to heal. One of the reasons there was a wall between me and my stepfather was because I did encounter some sexual abuse very early on. And that was something that my mother and I had to overcome. And we did. And, that goes back to being emotionally unavailable, not really paying attention to, taking care of me, making sure I was safe. And so, there's definitely a level of threat that I was living under. Really feeling like I was totally on my own, that nobody was protecting me from a very young age. I had to figure it out on my own, who would take care of me and who would, so that clairsentience in me, that feeling the vibes of who is safe and who is not, I really started to develop that at a very, very young age. And so that allowed me to really get into connection with my spirit guides from a very young age, of learning how to trust them when I was made to feel like this is not a good situation, you got to get out of here. Or, this is somebody in a situation that, is safe and you're going to be okay. And so there's a lot of experiences in my very early life where I found myself in situations that somehow, some way, I was removed out of. And I now know, looking back, that was spirit moving me out of those situations. And if you're listening to this, you can probably relate that, you got yourself in a relationship, or you got yourself in a situation with people who you thought were safe and they weren't. There was a night that I was at a sleepover at a friend's house, and definitely felt like, my parents definitely felt like I should be safe there. It was literally around the corner from where we lived. Was a friend I'd had for a while. They were, a stable family in the community. But there was a situation where, in the middle of the night, I could feel this energy coming towards me. And it was going to be not a good situation. And spirit kind of came through me and, told that person to go away. And they did. But it was again, spirit coming through me and protecting me. And so, for many people who've had experiences with spirit that they had at a very young age and they didn't know what it was and it scared them. Intuitively, it shut them down, and I've worked with so many people who, felt like somebody was sitting at their edge of their bed and it scared them, and, was it positive or was it negative? They don't know, because they just, shut it down, and when you shut it down with positive spirit and negative spirit, that's one of the things that I have to say that I have experienced, that when you've asked spirit to go away, positive or negative, they go away. Um, However, if they're attached to you, if it is a attachment, that is something that might take some work with a spiritual healer, energy healer, or someone who maybe is more spiritually aligned than you are. Again, that vibrational frequency, theirs is higher than yours. So there's definitely incidents when we're younger that some of us are able to embrace spirit, and they become part of our team. They become part of our experience, that we lean into them and we know that we're okay and we're not alone. And that was my experience. But I've worked with so many people who had the opposite experience. It was positive spirit, looking back on it, kind of working with them and tapping into it, knowing that their guardian angel was around them, but it was unknown to them. And it ended up being a situation where they got shut down. So for me, there was a lot of these incidences before I was about 13 where I now recognized spirit was coming in, and they were my guardian angel, my archangels, ascended masters. They were there lifting me up, and they were there protecting me and moving me out of situations that would have been very harmful, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, very harmful. And I'm very grateful for that connection now. But it wasn't until I was about 13 and I'd had a huge fight with my mother, which at that point we were having a lot of them, because I was trying to take back my independence and I was trying to take back my time. At that point I was, doing most of the laundry. I was doing most of the bathing of the children. I was doing most of the meal prepping. I was doing most of the basically running a household. And I was trying to take back have my own life. I was trying to, do things after school. I was trying to, really have a childhood that I was recognizing that my experience wasn't my friend's experience. And how do I get that? Right. And so I was trying to take back my autonomy. And so we had a huge fight, and I went, upstairs and slammed the door and laid on my bed and cried. And I just remember thinking, as we do, right? You've got that parent that's not there. You have a parent that is absent, and so you make these fantasies, right? You have these fantasies that they're a better person than they are. And my whole thing was like, I was making up these fantasies, like he can't show up because he's actually like, he's a spy and he's in the CIA, and, he can't be around, and why can't he come in and save me and be my hero. Right. And I was angry. I was so angry. Why can't this other person who's supposed to love me, is my father? I know who he is. He sits at a bar. He does nothing. He was disabled. So his day was either bartending or sitting at a bar. He lived above a bar. Worst case scenario for parent, right? And why can't he come and save me? Why can't he be a better person? And I was so angry, and I was so angry at him. And so all of this emotion that I had around my mother and my situation and all this anger, I was directing at him. Why can't he save me? Why can't he be here for me? And I just had this voice come into my head that I had to forgive him, because I needed to let myself off the hook. I needed to let go of this anger that was eating me up. And I was recognizing and realizing in that moment that all of that anger, it was affecting me. He had no idea. Didn't change his life one iota. And the other thought I was having kind of simultaneously is like, where is this coming from? I'm not old enough to know that. I'm not old enough to get this. Like, this is big, right? There was something in me on one part of my brain that was like, whew, that was a big concept. That's amazing. Where did that come from? Because that didn't come from me. That voice in my head is not me. I just knew it. And that was my spirit guide coming in and really helping me to know, giving me wisdom that I needed to change this energy around this relationship so that I could let go of this anger, and that was going to help me to see other parts of my situation differently, right? If I'm not doing the blame and the shame, then I have to look at what is going on here, why is it going on here, and how can I change it, right? How can I change it? And I can't change my mother. I can't change that situation, but I can change me, and I can change how I'm responding to it. And that was ultimately, this whole concept of forgiveness that was given to me. Because, I was having that very immature idea that I can't forgive these people. I can't let them off the hook. They've done me dirty. They've stolen my childhood. They want me to take care of them, and they're the parent, right? And so it's when I really understood something more. It would be years before I would actually lean into this on a conscious. Was very unconscious, right? It was going to be years before I leaned into this unconsciously or consciously. But from that point on, I felt less alone. And I remember I would lay in bed at night and I would talk to God. And I would, not probably never really hear a response, but I felt better. I had that feeling of I'm not alone, and whatever this heaviness is, it feels lighter after I have these conversations. I feel better, right? I feel more able to do what I need to do. I still struggled. For years, I struggled. There was a lot of healing that had to happen in my life around both of my biological parents. And again, like I said, I have. And, but, it was that instance that I really kind of understand, or was able to understand, that there was more than just our five senses. There was more going on in the universe. God was real, and I wasn't alone. And I would lean on him many times, especially in my early 20s when I did have a couple of real instances where I thought it would be easier to not be here, And with the traumas that I had dealt with at a very young age, it was decades of dealing with that by myself. Because it happened at such a young age, I really battled with, did it even happen? Was it a dream? And it was in my 20s that I bought my first book on surviving sexual abuse. And the very first line of that page, I'll never forget, was like, if you bought this book, then this did happen to you. And I was like, holy shit. Okay. All right. And the first time I ever spoke about it was actually in the confessional for my first communion. I was like 5 years old or 7 years old, whatever it is. I was young, and I said it in the confessional. And I just remember, like, the priest didn't know what to say, right? But it was the first time I'd verbalized it. Nothing happened, it's a sacred place. He couldn't go and say anything to my mom. Thank God, because I don't think we were ready to deal with it at that point. But it was always like, when you live with a secret and you feel like you were wrong and the secret is bad and you were the bad party in the secret, I gained a lot of weight. I used food as my comfort. I also used food as my comfort and gained weight because I didn't want to be noticed by boys. And so it took a long time. It was my early 20s that, I was able to overcome that through counseling. And again, spirit guided me to the right person. It was a nun in a church in a different town. They were $10 a session because at that point I was living on my own. I was working a full-time and a part-time job just to try to make my rent and car payment. I was in survival mode. No doubt about it. I was in survival mode. And so I was in lack. And so I had to work both jobs because I never had enough money. Because I was in the paradigm of lack of support, lack of love, lack of money, just that whole fear of not being safe and stable, and striving and driving was the way I was going to get out of it. Wish I'd known now what I know then. Changing my relationship with money would have changed my whole situation. But hindsight's 2020, and our spiritual development is we are where we need to be. And sometimes that can be really, really hard to embrace, that what you're going through is where you need to be. You're right where you need to be, because you need that lesson to let go of that story, or to release that trauma, or that piece of the trauma, right? So when we take on negative emotion, when we stuff it down into our emotional body, right? Where does it really go? Where does that energy really go? Well, it goes into our cells. It goes into our cells, and our cells are carrying it until we release it. And so it kind of gets divvied up between all your cells. And so that's why sometimes releasing something big, it takes time, because we've got to get to the deeper layers of our cellular memory to release it. So, even myself, just in this past week, if you watched the video that I did on YouTube for September and the eclipses, I talked about how I had something come up that I really thought I had dealt with, and it was around the sexual abuse, and it was around the anger. And I recognized that there were still parts of that were affecting my vibration and how I relate to people or don't relate to people. And so, there's it's a process, being human and being on this journey. It can be a lot. Wow, I had a sneeze come out of nowhere. I actually have been working with an older client for years, and she said, whenever you say something and you sneeze right after it, you're speaking truth. So I don't know what I was saying, but I guess I've been speaking truth. So we are raising our vibrational frequency by releasing that cellular memory. And so for me, that is what I've been doing all these years in working on learning about all different religions. I went through that, and basically the core of it all came down to, and I didn't study all of the religions. There's, thousands. But I did probably the main top 5, top 10. And it all came down to love. Love is the theme. Love is the central tenet that all religion shares. And if we can all just connect into source love, we're going to raise our frequency. So one of the things that I had to let go of was this idea of being a victim. I definitely felt like I was a victim, and that victim mentality of, why me? Why am I not being given to? Why don't I have these things? Jealousy, definitely, have dealt with jealousy throughout my life. Why isn't my experience better? Why am I not achieving all these things? Why am I not having all these things? I do the work. I had all these horrible things happen to me very early in my life. I've never had anybody there for me, like really leaning into that whole, victimhood, right? And so that's definitely something I've had to release. And, jealousy was definitely something that was within me, seeing, family members achieve things more easily, or receive things for no reason. Why can't that be me? Why did I have to go through all these horrible things, and now I can't get what I want? I can't, have my dreams come true. I can't have, people there supporting me unconditionally, that sort of thing. Because it was in my late 20s early 30s and 40s, where I had my most important relationships romantically, and all of them, either had an addiction uh, theme, narcissism theme, selfishness theme. Again, all the themes that I had grown up with showed back up. And so, it's been these many years that I've been recognizing that and really working on changing the vibration of that within me, um, so that moving forward, the people in my life don't embody those traits. So this is a process. So with the question, are you there, God? My answer is yes, he's always there. He's always been there for me, and he's always been there for you. But how you have related to him may have been differently. How you have received him may have been differently. And so many people that I work with, who are coming into their multidimensionality, really experiencing the other senses and coming into connection with their spirit guides, their spirit team, struggle because their first experience wasn't positive. Their first experience was unknown and scary, or it was with something that wasn't as loving as coming into connection with a spirit guide, a guardian angel, an angel. So wherever you kind of fall on this spectrum, just know that you can change it, and you can lean into these other senses, and you can be safe in doing it. You absolutely can be safe in doing it. And so one of the things that I teach is calling in white light when you want to work with a multidimensional being, whoever that is. Calling in being surrounded with love. Your lower energies and anything that is, I hate to use these words, but I guess I have to, evil, demonic, because it's out there, right? We're on a planet of duality. And it was about 10 years ago now, I was actually in a class teaching evidential mediumship, and my brother came through one of the participants as she was giving a demonstration. And basically it was to remind me, okay, you can live in light and love, and you can believe everything is roses and sunshine, but I have to remind you that evil does exist and that you have to be careful. And so it's very important for us to put our protections around us to stay in the higher frequencies. And one of the natural protections of not being able to be attached or be attacked is to not be able to resonate in those frequencies. And so one of the natural protections is raising your vibrational frequency into compassion, into gratitude, into discernment, and then into love, which is the highest frequency. And for some of us, we struggle being in those frequencies and staying in those frequencies. I think I wobble, right? I come in and out of. I think that's human. I think that's okay. And then calling on the white light. So residing in those higher frequencies as much as you can. Integrity is one of them. And then calling in the white light. Calling in universal source love. Very, very important. So, okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'm truly, truly honored. Have a beautiful rest of your day, week, month, year. I'm sending you so much love and so many blessings, and we'll talk soon.